Harish, just wanted to know, your expectations uh, about the classes.
I didn't get what you mean, your expectation.
Yes, like you only you're learning for your project purpose or to learn the subject, and also you wanted to go with a certification perspective.
To learn the subject. Actually, I'm not interested in any certification right now.
Sorry?
I'm not interested in any certification. I just want subject.
Okay, fine. Yeah, but still, like we have the syllabus content we had been planned to cover as such. So first we are going with the admin module, sorry, fundamentals. So as part of
Okay.
the fundamentals, like we'll be giving so it will be, I mean, we had covered in the fundamental concepts how it is like you will be understanding all the different services that Azure provides. So when multiple services, you are trying to understand how exactly the basic idea. So, what is why exactly we'll be using this service and what is the importance? So, in the real time project, so where exactly we'll be using? So, basically, these services will be creating for the environment setup. Like when you wanted to do as a if you wanted to do work as a DevOps engineer, you will be playing three key roles. Okay, so one is like you need to first thing you need to set up the environment. So example, we'll be maintaining dev, QA and prod environments as such. So we need to configure and set up the environment. That is the first thing we need to do. So after that, we need to build the CI/CD pipelines, because once I and developer will be giving the code. So whatever the code that the dev team is given, so by you can utilize a lot of IAC tools. So the infrastructure as a code. So you can just use those tools like Terraform, and in the Azure you can use ARM. Okay. So by using these tools, you can set up the templates to create the environment directly. Means so you can just when you use those tools, you can do it together. Means by a CI/CD pipelines only, you can even set up the environment as well. But if you are not using any of the tools, infrastructure tools, so then you need to configure the environment differently. So then we have to do the CI/CD pipeline. Apart from that, so one more very very important role that we'll be playing is monitoring. So once our environment is set up, our application is also deployed into the code, means environment which we had been set up. So we need to keep monitoring the environment, and we are able to provide certain reporting view analysis. Like we can just set up a lot of dashboards for the configurations which we have done, to make sure that the application health and the software health which we had been configured, so both should work as expected. Okay, so with this, so as part of the content, so we will be trying to cover. So first, as part of the first fundamentals, so what are the key areas, like key services you will be using for the environment configurations. So because when you set up the environment, you need to take care of multiple things. So we might have to just create the based on our application and business demand. So what is the kind of the environment, what is the kind of a service I need to use? So for that, first I'll be knowing what are the services that they are available. So if I want to use a more storage, so for that, what is the service that are available? And also, even though when you deploy your resources, you need to consider about the lot of parameters. Like you need to consider about the, so whether whatever the environment that you are creating, so with that you are able to achieve the high availability. So whether we are able to achieve the durability from that, and also whether we are able to provide the security for that. And also we need to analyze sometimes before even I set up the services. So what is the comparison that, what is the cost savings that I can do if I'll be moving other than on premises to the cloud. And also on the Azure itself, I might have to use lot of services. During that time, I need to compare. So from the cost wise, how much it is going to do. So for all these basic things, we'll be understanding via the fundamentals. So after we done with the fundamentals, we'll just start with the admin module. So if you're working on the project as a DevOps. So at that moment, so in the admin, it doesn't means you can just concentrate more on the storage and networking configurations, how exactly we'll be doing for the environment, and then how exactly we can do the monitoring and the backup services we'll be using. So that module we can concentrate more. And apart from that, so then we'll start with the CI/CD pipelines configurations, along with the basic understanding about the DevOps um, complete window, how exactly it looks like. So how exact if you require, so we can just start with so the task assignment, and how exactly we can create a work item, so project setup and everything. So then we'll be going with the repos and pipelines creation, how exactly we can do with that. Is that fine with you, Harish?
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
Okay, fine. So this I had. Okay, then we'll just start with the content. This is like I'll be sharing you with a folder, like whenever you require, so you can just go through that. The content also present, and it is having the basic understanding about if you are planning any time for the certification. So what is the process? You can just take it up. This slides has the info, so you can just go through that.
Okay.
Okay. So as part of fundamentals, so first we can just try to cover with the cloud concepts, like so what exactly the cloud. So here, what are the services, like earlier when we are trying to set up any kind of an environment, so we used to buy the physical hardware, so like VMware we need to purchase it. So from that we need to get the software, so where we can create a virtual machines, and from that virtual machines we need to use for the different capacity VMs we need to create, and then we need to do the networking configurations for that. After that we have to install our application. So right now, even whenever organizations, so which are all the organizations will be using on premises tools, like they don't want to go with the cloud, they can use the on premises tool. So when they'll be using the on premises tool, so during that time they can try to use this particular like VMware, like some of the softwares that they'll be using, and we can create a virtual. It will also same as the cloud, but there are little bit differences. Like they can create a virtual machines, and then they need to take care of the networking configurations, and then they need to maintain the server room which they require, and they have to provide the power supply and the net like they need to manually manage everything. So this requires highest capital investment. Like they need to initially they has to invest much money in that. So to avoid that, what exactly it started with the Amazon. The Amazon is the one first who has started with the cloud, like uh, the on-premise service, so cloud service providing to the other organization. So as part of this, when we move from on premises to the cloud, so whatever the services that I want, let's example like you wanted to create a DB service, so let's go to the portal which they had been provided. Here there is no third party, there is no bargaining, nothing. So when we wanted to buy the VMware, so we need to go and we need to communicate the price, and we need to invest that money initially, and we need to do configuration RN. So here on the cloud, you don't need to do anything. So whatever the service, okay, you wanted to do, so just create a service and pay the bill. So that is the main advantage of the cloud. And when we talk about when we are using the cloud, so the responsibility release on the so it's not completely everything is cloud provider. So we should be understanding that when we are moving to the cloud, so there are certain responsibilities which relies on the cloud providers, and certain responsibilities which relies on the end users. Like if you talk about the cloud, so they're completely responsible for physical data centers and networking and the host providing. Means they'll be creating their own physical servers. Like I can just use that as an host, and they'll be providing the networking configurations, but we need to do from our end for our system. And then also they had set up various data centers in the world. We can see in the multiple regions the data centers from the Azure. So wherever I want, so I can just go and deploy my services. It's this, because of that only we'll say that. So because of this cloud service providers, we can go global in a minute. So by sitting in our place, so which is the location I wanted to deploy my application, I can choose, so I can deploy it. So because of that, what exactly I can expect is, so if my end users are present, my application can be accessed more from that region. So the latency of that particular application will be very less. So we can just get the highest speed from that, means of high performance I can get it from the application. And as a service taker, so we are responsible for few things that also internally depends on kind of the service that we are taking. So we can take it up three different services, like infrastructure as a service, and then we can take it as a platform as a service, and then we can use it as a software as a service. So based on which type of the service that we are taking, so the kind of the service model also be different. So here when we take, like if we are taking only the infrastructure as a service, so we need to configure the operating system. Like we'll be getting the options to choose, but whenever if there is a patch update, if there is any operating system upgrade, if we have to do, so we have to do it as an end users, we need to do that from our end. And then networking control, so we can create a networking configuration, because it will be completely under our control. So with the skills, like the good knowledge about the networking, like how exactly, and also when we are creating, when we are defining the networking rules, so it is going to act as a kind of firewall for our applications which I am going to host on that particular uh, instances. So these are going to protect as a firewall. So we need to decide, so which port to allow, which IP address to allow to access my devices. So as such we can set it up the configuration. And then we can application, so always the application and identity and infrastructure. Like, so if I set up my application in that particular instances, so to which are all the resources I wanted to provide the access, so which users can access it. And also if there any, I'll be having internally development team, testing team, so which are to whom I need to provide the access to connect to that particular instances. So that can be divided by the Microsoft Entra ID, and we can set the roles and groups, and we can provide the role based access control for the specific services, for the specific roles or the groups. And application, this is application and data is completely on the end users. If we are choosing infrastructure or the platform as a service, because here we are coding and we'll be having our application, we'll be maintaining our data. So only thing we'll be getting from the cloud is the uh, physical host over there, and the internal runtime environment and configuration. So apart from that, we need to maintain our application code, everything. But if you are going for the software as a service, excuse me, we no need to maintain even the applications as well. So it is completely, if I need just purchase the license, so or the subscription, so with that I can create all the services which I require. Example, like we can use Zoom and Salesforce application, Microsoft Outlook. So all this comes under the software as a service. So with this, this is a example how exactly it will give the shared responsibility. So if you're going with the different types of the services, like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, and if you go with the on-premises, so here completely we need to maintain, we need to do capital investment, and we need to buy the servers and configure networking. We need to set up our physical data center where exactly I wanted to have my hardware as such. So but when I take it with the infrastructure, so like here in the Azure, we can create a VMs and virtual machines, scale sets and all. So when we create those services, like I can create VM and virtual machine scale sets in the Azure, And if we if we take about the AWS, so I can create the EC2 instances. So by creating these instances, like what exactly we can do is we can just get the physical host. For that we'll be not getting any runtime environment. Along with that, we need to connect to these instances and we need to deploy our application. In the same way, when we are doing the platform as a service, like completely we'll be getting this operating system and physical host, everything from the cloud providers. But so it's our responsibility to deploy the application, and runtime environment will be present. So we need to decide which I want it to be configured, how exactly I need to configure. So we it will be getting the direct options, but we need to, if any changes are there, we can set it up. And application and all, completely we need to maintain data, everything, and creating the rules and groups and providing the access for that. So we need to take. So when we talk about the software as a service like Outlook, we can just take it as an example. So here, completely the code, data, environment, everything is taken care by the uh, Azure itself, like cloud providers. So we can just take the example of Microsoft Outlook. So when we take this, so they will do, but only thing, if I wanted to have use it, so I can do configuration with my credentials. That's it. And apart from that, if I want to get some advanced option, I can buy the subscription. So this is most extensively used services in the Azure. Like we can try to use the under these services different deep databases that we can create, and also we can create app service, and we can create Kubernetes and EKS, Azure Kubernetes services, and also we can try to create a functions. So by using functions, we can go serverless, like wherein we no need to pay for the physical host that we are using. We can pay using the number of transactions that we'll be using. So apart from that, we can try to use different uh, like AKS service as well. And we can create various kind of a storage accounts. So where exactly we can try to use the storage. Okay. So yeah, this is the basic idea about the shared responsibility. So here the cloud models, like deployment models when we talk. So we will be having four like different deployment models. The main three deployment models are, so we have private deployment model, public deployment model, and then the hybrid deployment model. So when we talk about the private deployment model, so let's assume we can take the example of on premises. Like we are not going to share the hard drive, I mean physical host which I'm using, with any other client, because we may, when we'll be having very highly sensitive data, so during that time we don't want to host our application in the same physical hardware where exactly others also share. So during that time we will be we can, in the Azure or in the any of the cloud providers, they'll provide the separate service, like we can purchase the dedicated host. So when we use dedicated host, even in the Azure also we can try to use. So dedicated host service, we can try to book it. Means we can try to purchase the dedicated host for us. So during that time we are not going to share this physical server with anyone. So that is an example for the private cloud deployment. And we can have private deployment as well. Means here when we are doing the on premises, we can just try to purchase our own hardware, and we can deploy our resources as well. And when we talk about public cloud, so here it is kind of an example where exactly in the regular basis we'll be deploying our services are. So here on the Azure or AWS, so we they'll be creating the physical hardware. So where commonly most of the organizations deploy in the same data center their applications. So in that way we can just, so that there we can see the deployment model, we can call it as a public. Then we'll be having hybrid, because sometimes what we'll do, we already purchase the on premises server, like we have a particular server XYZ which I'll be using for my DB. But for my application run, I want, means my application I don't have I need to purchase new server for that. So it will I need to invest more capital investment for that. So during that time, what I can do is I can run my DB still on my local, whatever the data center that I have, and I can move my app service if I'll be using this is on the cloud. So here I can say that we are having both the combination of the public and the private models I'll be using. So this kind of a deployment is called as the hybrid deployment model. And here, if we talk about the in the Azure, so there are to support the hybrid deployment model, like when you are having on premises to the cloud. So there are a lot of tools you need to understand, because 90% of the almost 50 to 60% of the organizations will be in the transition phase. So where they'll be following the hybrid model. So it's better to understand the different tools which help us to coordinate the resources which are present on the on premises and on the cloud. And this is the comparison, like when we go with the public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. So what is the difference that we can get it? So which is more flexible with a specific understanding. So one basic understanding we should have more clear. So when we go with the private cloud, so whether it is on premises on the cloud only, if you are doing the dedicated host, so the charge is high because it is only used for our individual purpose. So here charge is high. And what about security? Security is also very high because I am doing my own a physical host. So I'm not going to merge with any others. I can set my own rules. But here we need to do configuration. So I want the skills, okay, to configure this environment. So I want the very high skills to do this configurations and all. And internal, whatever the internal configurations I wanted to do, right? So everything will be on our control. Okay, so we can have the control over that. We no need to depend on the any other cloud features. But when we talk about the public, so here when compared to the private cloud, so we will be not having much security. It will be less compared to the private model. Here also we can integrate third party tools and all, but still if I compare the private cloud, so it is having less security. But charges which I need to pay is very very less when compared to the private cloud. And also skills also I require very less, because I can directly use the platform as a service. Like I can try to get the internal configurations ready, which we need to do everything from the scratch. And here, that is what, like when I talk internal, complete internal control will not be with our hand. So it will be from the Azure. So usually if anywhere, if we stuck or something, we can communicate with the, we can try to connect with the Azure team. So they'll be having 24 bar 7 team to support. So then we can get the solution from that. Okay, Arish, any questions you have?
No, I don't have because I have some knowledge about this. So
Okay, so we are in a good phase, right? Is
yeah,
it not boring?
no,
Okay,
it's interesting so much.
sorry.
Uh, Something interesting to get more knowledge.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then see, these are the basic models which we'll be using. So apart from that, we can see other deployment models as well. So we'll be having a multi-cloud environment, we'll say. So sometimes what we'll do, I already told there are multiple tools we can use to do the cost comparison. So anyone, let's assume that I wanted to create some database, okay, and I have my application. So like I have a app service, means I wanted to set up one web app. Okay, so during that time what I'll do, if I'll be the solo responsible for my resource configuration, if I have a good knowledge about the Google Cloud, and if I have a good knowledge about the Azure and AWS. Okay, and even there are a lot of other organizations also. Alibaba, I think they'll also provide cloud services, like multiple cloud service provider tools also there. So these are the majorly used tools. So when I wanted to create multiple resources, what I can do is, so rather than go as I know Azure and create a resources, I can do the cost comparison. So there are certain tools which they will give the prediction. Okay, we can predict, if I'll be creating these particular services, I wanted to do run on their cloud platform around 3 years. And for this, what is the storage I want? What is the operating system I wanted to configure? and based on our performance. Okay, and also which region I wanted to deploy. So these, if I know these basic things, so I can use the predictor tool. Okay, in each of the service there will be a predictor tool. I can compare the cost. Like example, if I'll be creating the database in the Google Cloud. So what is the approximately cost prediction I can get it for 3 years, and for from the Azure and from the AWS. So I'll usually compare it, and then I can just try to create my resources on the specific platform. So in that scenarios, my applications, whatever I'm using, whatever my resources are present, it's not only present on one cloud platform, so it is present on the multiple cloud platforms. So we can try to distribute our resources as such as well. So this is an example for the multi cloud deployment model as well. So we can use different kinds of tools. Like one of the tool we have is Azure Arc. Example, if you have if you wanted to control from the Azure the resources which are present other than the Azure cloud. Okay, so during that time, uh, this Azure, in the same way, if you go to the AWS also, there is a tool which will help you to control the resources. So here, as a single platform, you can try to control and coordinate all the resources by sitting by uh, configuring the Azure Arc tool in your portal. Okay, so it will help you to in different way, like by using one portal. So to watch other resources on the other cloud platform and do the configurational changes and control the do the monitoring. So this will help you. Okay, so this is an example for the cloud deployment model. In the same way, we have the community deployment model. So there are like multiple organizations which serve the same interest, or else let's assume that there are few organizations so which are working very closely from the more years. So then what exactly they can do is they can decide together, and they can try to communicate with the Azure, and they can get the separate host for them, so separate physical hardware for them, so which is dedicated only for their organizations application deployment. So in that way, we can just make sure that a single community of a group of organization which belongs to single community, they can try to deploy their resources in one region. So that kind of a deployment we call it as a community model of the deployment. So these are the deployment different deployment models which we can use it. So we can use so private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, and apart from that, we can use multi-cloud. So community model will be having. Then Azure Arc is a tool, so which helps us to maintain the resources from the multiple cloud platforms. Okay. So apart from that, we can use the consumption-based model. So it's like, so this consumption based model, so Azure will be having two different models, like where is one is example is capital expenditure. This is a kind of investment that we'll be doing. Based on that, we'll call it as a capital expenditures and the operational expenditure. So when we talk about the capital expenditure, it's kind of it incurs high investment. Okay, so because how exactly it will be decided, if you wanted to set up your on premises resources, you need to buy the specific capacity, the server. So after that, you need to pay the rent for the data center which you will be using, and with that server, definitely we need to pay high cost. And after that, you need to provide the power supply. For that also we need to pay, and also we need to do the networking configuration, so we need to pay for that. And to maintain, we need to and also we need to do for the maintenance, we should have some manual team as well. So if you consider all these things, it is a kind of a regular maintenance that is required. So you need to do regularly, pay for the rent and power, everything. And also all this power, you should have the backup as well. But still, you don't have, if this particular data center crashes, there is no backup for us. Okay, so it's kind of, I can say, the completely the capital investment which is required. And we need to complete continuously, we should keep on paying, whether you are trying to use the resources, like if your application is running on that server or not, you have to keep paying the money for the maintenance activities. Okay, so we can consider this investment which is present, like initial high investment and also the periodic investment which we'll be doing, so as the capital expenditure. So one more type of the expenditure we have, operational expenditure. So under this we can try to save as a, like we can trying to save our money, so only till the service or the product that we are using. So if my application is working or running on the server, I need to pay for that. If it is not, we need no need to pay. So that is what we can say. So here Azure we can use as a pay as you go model we'll be using. Like as if you are using for 1 hour, you can pay only for that. If you're using for 30 minutes, like one day, you need to pay for that. If you are using that your application is running for 1 month, we need to pay for that. Okay. And when we are using the operational expenditure, so we can get, usually this is the kind of expenditure we are getting from the, when we'll be using the cloud services. So this is like with our own data centers when we are trying to maintain it. So here when we are trying to do the operational kind of consumption based model, like how much you are trying to utilize it, so you need to pay for that. So here there are a lot of benefits. Okay, so that we no need to pay upfront cost like regular maintenance and all, we no need to pay. It's been taken care by the Azure or any cloud provider. So what exactly we should do is, whatever the resources that they are present, so I mean, so what are the services that they are providing, so we need to get that services, that's it. And also we no need to purchase our own any of the infrastructure. Okay, so it's like whatever they had been present, so I can try to use it, that's it. And also we need to pay whatever the resources that if like whenever I want more capacity, okay, if I want n number of tools, I can try to keep on adding. So there is no limit for that. So whatever the services that you wanted to use, let's assume you wanted to use the logs, you wanted to use the storage, you wanted to do the machine learning application. So there, and they're also doing the continuous research on the resources how exactly we'll be using, and they'll be providing all the resources. Sometimes if they are not providing, we can try to get it from the Azure marketplace as well. That is a main advantage. Then, so we need to stop paying for the resources that I'm not using. But for that, we should be aware that once we create our resources, if I'm not utilizing, I need to remove those resources. I need to terminate or delete those resources from the Azure portal which I'll be using it. Okay, so here these are the some of the benefits of using the cloud computing. So one thing, uh, we'll be getting the high availability. So why we are getting the high availability? Um, because we will be having different kinds of the uh, they will be creating the data centers. We'll discuss in the next class that one. So apart from that, they can have the regions which multiple availability zones, and also they'll be providing the service called region pairing. So via these services, what exactly we can do is we can distribute our resources in the multiple regions of the Azure. So in that way, like example, if I'll be having one application to be configured, I can take up one, means I can try to distribute my application in the multiple availability zones. So I had created a web app. So when I, rather than using the web for the web app deployment, so rather than using the one resource with more capacity, so if when I use this resource with more capacity, if it gets crashes, completely my data will be crashed. If this data center crashes, completely my application will be lost. I need to recreate the data which I had been hosted. So to avoid that, what we'll be doing is, so we will be, rather than creating one capacity, we will be creating our resources with three different resources. Like if I'll be creating the virtual machine, so I'll be creating with lesser configuration three different VMs, and I can deploy my code into each VM, and we'll be using the load balancers, so which try to balance the traffic from traffic to all the three different web apps. And in this way, when I do, even though if this web app gets some issue, I my application still will be running from the other two web apps that I had been created. And if rather than distributing this into one place, so I can distribute into the three different availability zones which are present. So in this way, my application, even though one data center crashes, so my application will be running from the other data centers. So these configurations will make sure, I mean, I need to decide, so one who will decide how to do the load balancing, how to distribute the resources, how much capacity the resources we should create. So this is with our hands. But if we properly architect the resources and utilize it, so we can get the highest availability and the durability for our applications. And then scalability in the sense, you when it is the one of uh, most benefit that we'll be getting. So when we'll be using on premises resources, if I wanted to, so let's assume that I had very less users, so my application is enough to store the db data, run the web application and store all the customers data. We had created one more VM, so we are just good with that. So right now I had around 1,000 users. So we had started with 1,100. So I predicted that, so till 1,000 users I can manage with this particular server. So all of a sudden my user count increases. Like I just started getting requests like more than 1,000, like 1,200, like that I started getting. During that time, I need to increase the capacity. How I can increase? I need to purchase with my own cost this physical server, and again I need to create. So here also I need to do the load balancing. Okay, fine. So I'm good. So we when the count is increasing, so we can purchase it. But what about if suddenly the transaction decreases? Still we need to do the pay for this, and we need to take care of the maintenance of these two resources. So this is very high for the any of the end users which they are using. But if you are using the cloud resources, so whenever I wanted to increase the uh, services, like let's assume I created one VM today, so till 1,000 VMs with different capacities I can immediately scale up. So I can just set certain, we can do this via custom and we can do it as manual as well. So one second. So when we are doing it with a custom, I'll just show you practically how exactly we can define these rules to scale up the scale down. And immediately let's assume the count is decreased, the users transactions has been decreased. Then I can even do the scale down as well by using the Azure. And when we do scale up and scale down, so we no need to do when I do scale up, I need to pay. If I do scale down, I no need to pay for the not used resources. Like let's assume that initially I had created 10 VMs, I was paying for that. So when the I have to pay for this monthly specific amount, like assume that 1,000 rupees I used to pay. So after that, immediately my transactions increased, I want more capacity, I can increase it to the around 30 VMs. So then I need to pay for 30 VMs around 3,000 rupees. So after that some time, the number of users accessing our application has been decreased. So then what I should do, again I can scale down to the 10 VMs only. So now I need to pay only 1,000 rupees. So in that way, so whatever the resources that we'll be using, so we can only pay for that. And also whenever there is a means when there is a more capacity I want, more instances that I want, I can automatically scale up and I can automatically scale down the resources. And in the scale up and scale down, we have two different types we can do it. So one is horizontal scaling and another one is vertical scaling. So always this is the horizontal scaling is the recommended, because when we create, rather than creating one instances with more capacity, if I do that, if this and if I need to I need to place this in one data center. So if I place it in one data center, if either the data center crashes or the instance gets crashed because of the high load, the complete my application data will be lost only. Okay, so I'm not able to recover it. If I have a backup, I can make it up from the backup. But advantage of using the horizontal scaling is like rather than creating one instance with higher capacity, I can create 5 instances with a lesser capacity. So here I can distribute these instances in different availability zones, like availability zone 1, availability zone 2, and I can use the load balancer. So my application will be running on all the three instances, and load balancer will control the traffic to the each instances which I had been created and my application is added. So in this way, either the data center I can distribute into the different availability zones. So either the data center crash happens, or if the data center crash happens, or if it is because of the instance happens. So we don't lose complete data. So we our application will be running from the other instances which we had been created. Is it clear?
Yeah, Mamta.
Yeah.
So we cannot use more instances in vertical scaling, right? Only we can increase the size of the RAM CPU.
Yeah, it is not recommended. Vertical scaling is not recommended. We
No,
can
it's 5%.
yeah, so we can try to use this horizontal scaling, like we in the like example, if you are creating, so there is an option called VM scale set, right? So there we can start in increasing the instances whichever we want.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll see how exactly we can do the scaling and all. And this is we need to do manually when we are using the infrastructure as a service. Like in this, if you are using the platform as a service, right? So there inbuilt in that service only, it is automatically built in. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So there we no need to configure. So as like whenever your application load is keep on increasing, so automatically the capacity and the instances will keep on increasing. Yeah. So reliability. So it's kind of like yeah. So as our application, we'll be taking a lot of backup of the resources. We can do the region pairing as well. So as we are taking the region pairing when we are doing, I'll show you how exactly we can do it with the portal. So when as we are doing the region pairing and all, so we can get our instances more like if any failures occurs in the one region, immediately I can try to make our application up and running from the another region. It's kind of very easily I can try to conquer the failures which are going to be happen. And also predictability. So as I told, it provides a lot of tools, like even to predict the health of the Azure instances. Like we can just try to connect with the specific services. Like one is we can predict in multiple ways. Like example, I wanted to predict the performance, I need to predict the cost. So for cost wise, we have total cost ownership tool, so which will give the total, we can compare the cost. And also we can use another one, pricing calculator. So for instance wise, if you wanted to predict how much charge you will get, approximately you may get, so you can use the pricing calculator. Okay. So then agility, like so whenever we configure, means how easy to configure the resources with our own requirements. So that is what defines the agility. So here we no need to depend on any third party vendor. So whenever I want any resources, I can just go ahead and I can try to create the resources. Okay. Yeah, let me just take you to the portal which we can use it. Just a overview. Yeah. So this is a basic portal. So you have account created, Harish.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So once we create our account, so we can just see all the different types of the services that we can use. So we can just view here. So we have AI and machine learning, analytics, blockchain, and compute containers, all different kind of resources which we wanted to use. So we can just learn those instances. So apart from that, the main area, I mean main modules which we need to which we need to understand is the different types of the resources, how exactly we can create. Apart from that, we should have the subscription. So here subscription we can track it for the billing purpose. Like we can just, if I wanted to here also whatever the billing that we'll be getting the prediction. And we can see all the resources groups that we had been created, and also resources that are present as part of our instances. And we can see what is our usage quota that I have, what is the limit that I'm okay to utilize the resources. I can try to view from here. And basically, so the subscription type also defines which kind of a resource that we can use it. So always better to do of kind of if you are practicing for your own, not from the organization. So you can set up a few cost alerts, because we initially will be having a pre-service. So once it's get expired, like we need to pay for the services that we'll be getting. So we can use Azure Sandbox as well. So maybe I'll just show you how exactly we can use the Azure Sandbox. So via that, we can try to use one sandbox for 1 hour completely. We can try to create resources and do the practice and all. And if you are using the Azure only, so you will maintain your amount of the resources with less amount, because how exactly, as soon as the resources has been created, you try to set up a alert, so that if it your cost exceeds than that, so you will be getting the immediate notification that you had been exceeded your set budget, so you will be more alert. And also, once you created any resource groups or any resources, try to go to the resource groups and try to delete completely resource group. So you can just go to the resource group, try to delete that resource group by providing the name of the resources which you had been created. So as such, you can try to make sure you are not going to get billed very higher. And one more thing, you can see your active directory, and whenever you wanted to, we'll just talk. Now we can try to view under the earlier it was Azure AD account, so now we can see it as a Microsoft Intra ID. So here, if you go, you can try to create, maintain all the other users to whom we need to provide the access. And one sec. So these are the different directories that we can create multiple directories, and we can just try to switch it as well. So that directory, once we get into that particular directory, so there inside that we can try to see what exactly we should able to see all the. Yeah, so this is the default directory which we are using. So here, whenever we want to create a users and users groups and all, we can try to create and we can provide the access for the external users. Okay, so here from where exactly we can set up the authorization process, how wanted to do, like example multi-factor authorization if we wanted to do, and if I wanted to provide single sign-on. So there are different ways that we can try to authenticate. So what exactly we have to do, so we can just try to decide from this particular app. Okay,
Good.
any question, any questions you have?
No,
Okay, fine. So as we discuss about the, sorry. Yeah, so cloud services types. So we have three different cloud services, like we have infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service, and software as a service. So we can just start with the infrastructure as a service. So here, in the infrastructure as a service, like we'll be just the difference is we can create under the Azure, so virtual machine and virtual machine scale sets. So when exactly we can create is like if I'm trying to do some just create an instances for the testing purpose and then remove it. So for that reason, we can just try to use this instances like left and shift migration, and also testing and development. Like usually the developers initial phase, they'll try to write down the code, and later they wanted to use that code for the or remove that and then deploy to the actual testing environment. So during that time we can try to create this infrastructure as a service, because they cost, like when compared to the app services and all inside the Azure, so they'll cost very less cost wise. For that reason, whenever I wanted to create some instances and do the testing, or if I'll be doing the coding which is in the development phase, so during that time I can try to create this infrastructure as a service. And here the cloud provider is maintaining the hardware and networking connectivity and the physical security which is required. So apart from that, we are responsible for operating system installation and configuration and maintenance. Apart from that, networking configuration. So if I wanted to add up data, if I wanted to connect, if my application is running, if I wanted to add the connection strings for the DB, so I need to take care of that. And also for our application, and to maintain our data, so we'll be using it. So we'll just see quickly how exactly we can try to create the virtual machine and virtual machine scale sets, then we can talk about the platform as a service. You have idea about creating the virtual machines?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Then
I know how to create virtual machine through Azure, but I don't know how to create from the Terraform.
okay, you know to create from here, but you don't know to create from the Terraform, right?
Yes,
Okay, maybe I'll show you from the next class how exactly you can try to create from the, I'll show you app service, and means this instance is only how exactly you can create from the Terraform.
sure.
Okay. So here we can just use the Azure subscription. So we can just use whatever the resource group that we are having. So then we can provide the name of the virtual machine which we wanted to create. So we can just give it as a test VM which we wanted to give. And here I can decide, like if actually if I'm using for our application deployment, I can just a region I can decide which is nearest for me, because my application when I deploy nearest to my place, so then definitely that application will be having a low latency, so my end users can access the application with higher speed than the uh, uh, when my application is running on the different region. And also here automatically it has set the no infrastructure redundancy required, because here data redundancy, we'll call it as how exactly you're trying to distribute your data storage, mean in the different zones. Like as we are creating only one VM, so I no need to set up data redundancy. But when I'll be creating more than one instances, so I need to define the data redundancy. Means so during that time, if I'll be creating a one instances, what exactly I can try to do is I can try to distribute that resources in the multiple regions. Like example, in the East US region, I will be having three availability zones. Okay, so if I'll be creating three different VMs, rather than placing all the VMs, it might be if it is east to west. So I'll be having one availability zone, availability zone 2, availability zone 3. So when my application will be present in the zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. So if see, these are all availability zones are discrete data centers, means they are independent, they'll be having their own networking, cooling, everything, they are not interdependent. So that is the reason. So rather than deploying my all three VMs in one region, I will try to do the I can achieve different types of the redundancy. So we call it as a local redundancy storage, and I call it as a zone redundancy storage. How exactly in different zones I wanted to distribute, and then I can have zero zone redundant storage, and then we can have zero zone and zero redundant storage. So by we can just choose different types of the storage how exactly I wanted to distribute. So zone redundant storage with the primary copy is the best option, so I can distribute my VMs in the different availability zones by using this. So internally they'll distribute as such with multiple regions when we'll be creating multiple instances. If one instance, in the sense like it doesn't create a no need to have the redundancy. I can have it in one data center. So then automatically it will go to the no infrastructure redundancy required. So then I can just go to the standard security type, and here I can just choose as for example Ubuntu as the operating system. So then I can just go with the default configurations. And yeah, so from Azure recommend Azure advisor will be having, so from which we'll be getting some of the recommendations. Okay, so here I can just select the disk type like here. So based on my workload, I need to set here also I can just choose the redundancy. So I have locally redundant storage because I have created only one data center VM, so that it is going to replicate within the single data center three different copies of the uh, uh, my application which I am creating. So my physical server which I'll be hosting it. So then I can just go with the networking. So here the networking we can just we'll be discussing in the next module what are the different why networking is important, how exactly we can create a different subnets, okay, everything. So once it is we can just create a basic net, these are the default net, we it will create one network group, so under which it will be having a default subnet, so where our application will be operating in that particular subnet. Then I am going to provide inbound port, means so if I wanted to connect to the resources, only the SSH is being provided. So means you can try to connect the this particular machine. If it is like if you are having a operating system with Windows 7 or 8, you can try to connect with the putty tool, or there is mobile extreme another mobile x that is one of the tool which you can connect as well. So directly from the PowerShell also you can try to by the commands. So you can try to Linux commands, you can try to invoke this instance as well. So if you had been provided the RDP as well, so whatever the ports that you are going to give the inbound ports which you are trying to provide it, so with that different ways you can try to invoke to the instance that you had been created. So as we are not having multiple instances, we don't need to do any of the load balancers. Like if I have more than one instances, I need the load balancers to distribute the traffic into the multiple instances. Then we can do the management. So as part of the managements, like how exactly I wanted to manage my resources, like whether I need to provide the Azure AD connect with this particular resources, or how exactly it should take up the backup. So whatever the OS will be using, how exactly it should upgrade. So all these configurations we can provide it. So Microsoft Defender for the cloud. This is one of the security service which is provided from the Azure. So it will be providing with basic level and advanced level as well. So with the basic level, we don't need to pay anything. But when I wanted to get the periodic logs, and also I wanted to analyze the security issues and all, so then I need to pay. I need to buy the latest, I mean advanced version. Then monitoring, like as you once you set up the virtual machine, so I need to keep monitoring like the health of the instance that I had been created. Like it might be with the inbound network and outbound networking, and also I need to check the CPU threshold, okay, so performance, everything I need to keep a track for that disk utilization, how much it is happening. So in that way I need to be keep on monitoring. So for that reason I can set up the alerts, and also there are different tools I can integrate like VM insights. We can enable those, and we can try to get the specific logs to monitor the instances. Then advanced, so here when I'll be configuring. So if I wanted to, this instances will be created without any of the runtime environment. Like if I wanted to create these instances with some runtime environment, like I wanted to install some software while creating the instance itself, then I can try to pass some of the commands over here, Linux commands, so that it will try to create the instances along with the software that we had been specified. So here the tax plays a very important role, like in the billing and filtering the resources at the organization level for that. So here basically like you wanted to do the tags for your reference, like example if you're using for a specific purpose, like you're using for the storage purpose. One second. So here, like example, what is the purpose that I'll be using, and why exactly for a specific department which we belong, and a specific subscription that we belong, and a specific reason why exactly I'll be creating is sometimes environment on which we are creating, like QA dev. So I'll be what are all the ways that I can filter these resources, so I can just try to add those tags for the reference. Okay, so once I am done with all the details, so I can just try to review this particular configurations which I had been provided. So I can just view these details, and here I am just getting the amount as one almost 1 plus rupee per hour. So I wanted to reduce it. So when I wanted to reduce it, I can just decide. There are different parameters which it will decide. So one of the region is East US region. When I change, so I can just try to review it, so it costs less. So you can just see the difference in the cost with a specific region. So it's not, it is the cost will not vary because which is nearest to me, because here the Azure, whatever the region, so how much the cost they are incurring, like example for the power, what exactly they're paying, so for the rent what exactly they're paying, manual effort what exactly they're paying. So based on that, they had been set up certain amount for the specific region. And also it depends on the operating system that you will be using and the capacity that you had been image. Like here you can see we had used the specific image, and after that we had decided the size. So our cost deciding factors are, one thing is the region, how exactly you had been configured. So apart from that, the size of the instances that you will be creating, and the region where exactly you are creating, and type of the disk that you are utilizing. So in this way, the multiple factors will decide the cost of the instances that we'll be creating. So once it is done, so we can just try to create and view how exactly the instances will look like. Okay. Can we stop here and continue from tomorrow?
Yeah, sure, but can we connect in your evening times? Is it possible for you?
Yeah, sure. Evening,
So
what is the time?
uh, after 7, what you are comfortable?
Yeah, that will be good.
Just let me know. After 7, it will be 7 or 8 or 9.
8 to 9, almost 8 to 9:30. I'll be having